There is a way to train that pulls fat off your organs, resets the machinery inside your cells, and takes about 11 minutes. Not 11 minutes of magic, 11 minutes of real work, done in a specific order with a specific kind of recovery around it. I will give you that exact protocol before this ends. But if you skip the mechanism and jump to the workout, you will waste it. I wasted years that way, training harder and harder, doing everything I was told, and getting quietly, slowly worse at burning fat. So let me paint a picture first, because this is the picture that finally made all of it click for me. Imagine your fat-burning machinery as tiny factories inside every cell in your body. Millions of them turning fuel into usable energy. Now imagine you walk in and run those factories at redline for a full hour. Every machine screaming, every worker sprinting flat out. Yes, you burn fat. You feel it happening. The watch confirms it. That part is real and nobody is lying to you. But then you walk out, and those factories are wrecked. Machines overheated, workers finished. And they stay that way for hours afterwards. For the rest of the day, they limp along. They cannot process fat well. They cannot handle a normal meal calmly. So here is what actually happened. You did not create fat burning in that hour. You borrowed it from the other 23. You took an advance against your own day, spent it in 60 minutes, then paid interest on it until bedtime. That is the trap. And almost nobody notices because the workout looks brilliant on paper while the rest of the day falls apart. I want to get you out of that trap, and I want to do it by shrinking your training time, not growing it. I will also share the biggest mistake I made for years. It had nothing to do with the workout itself. It happened in the 2 hours after. It was quietly canceling part of the adaptation I was sweating for. That comes later. Here is the map. First, how your cells decide whether to build or retreat after training, and why that decision controls everything. Second, why hard training and easy training send completely different messages. Not better or worse, different languages entirely with different results. Third, what actually moves insulin resistance and visceral fat, because the research surprised me and contradicts what I once firmly believed. Fourth, the exact structure. What to do, how often, what time of day, and that 11-minute session I promised you. Fifth, the small nutritional details that multiply everything else, including the mistake that cost me years of unnecessary effort. By the time these 5 connect, the cardio debate stops being confusing. It becomes a simple system that you can actually operate. Let us start with the core misunderstanding, because everything after this depends on you getting this one idea completely right. Your mitochondria do not adapt because you exercised. They do not care that you were sore, drenched, or completely broken afterwards. Effort is an ego measurement. It is how the workout felt to you, the conscious person. Your cells have no access to that feeling. What they respond to is energetic stress. Chemical signals saying the current energy setup cannot meet the demand being placed on it. Inside every muscle cell there is a constant conversation running. It never stops, whether you are training or sitting on the couch. That conversation is 3 questions. How much energy do we have? How fast are we spending it? How much damage are we taking? The molecule sitting at the center of that conversation, listening to all 3 channels, is called PGC1-alpha. You will hear it called the master regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning it controls the building of brand new mitochondria. That is true, but it undersells it badly. PGC1-alpha is less a switch and much more a switchboard. It listens to energy depletion when fuel runs low. It listens to calcium, which floods your fibers every time they contract. It listens to oxidative stress from hard work. It listens to adrenaline, caffeine, and cortisol. It even listens to heat exposure. Then, having weighed all of it, it makes a decision. Build more mitochondria, improve the ones we already have, or shut everything down. That third option is real. Training can genuinely downgrade your metabolic machinery, and we see it in under-recovered people constantly. So here is the reframe. Your mitochondria are not impressed by your effort. They respond to how threatening the environment feels. A challenge that feels survivable says, we should get better at this because it will clearly happen again soon enough. A challenge that feels overwhelming says, we are under attack, protect what we have, and stop spending on expensive upgrades. Same workout, two opposite verdicts. And the deciding factor is not the workout at all. It is everything surrounding it. Hold that thought, because it becomes the most important idea here once we start talking about why people plateau. Now let us talk about high-intensity intervals, because they are genuinely powerful, but only within the right context. The research here is consistent. Intervals cause large, fast spikes in PGC-1 alpha signaling within minutes and hours, not weeks. Those spikes come from 3 sources at once, which explains why intervals punch so far above their weight for time invested. First, calcium. Every time a fiber contracts, calcium floods the cell. Hard contractions produce far bigger and more frequent floods. That calcium activates enzymes that tap PGC-1 alpha on the shoulder. Calcium is essentially the volume signal in this conversation. Second, the energy alarm. You burn through app faster than you can replace it, and your cellular bank balance visibly drops. That activates AMP, your low fuel sensor. When it fires, it shuts down expensive projects and switches on fat burning simultaneously. Third, oxidative stress. Hard work creates reactive oxygen species, and we have all been trained to hear that phrase and flinch. But in small, brief, controlled amounts, these are not damage. They are signal. The stress itself is the instruction to adapt. So intervals flood your system with all 3 messages at once, compressed into a very small window of time. That is why they work so well per minute. You are not sending 1 message. You are sending 3 in parallel. But here is the part that almost never gets explained, and it is the most important sentence in this whole thing. A spike is a command. It is not a guarantee. Shouting build more mitochondria does not mean anything actually gets built. Whether that command gets carried out depends entirely on whether your body has the resources and recovery capacity to carry it out. Think of a boss demanding a new factory by Friday. With money and staff, you get a factory. Without them, you get a memo. And some resentment. And eventually people quit. The instruction was perfect. The execution was simply impossible from the start. That is exactly what happens when you stack intervals onto poor sleep, high stress, under-eating, and no easy movement. Your body is not stupid. It eventually stops responding to a signal it has repeatedly proven it cannot act on. This is why people plateau while training harder than ever. The stimulus is not too small. The stimulus is being ignored. Now let me flip to the other end of the spectrum, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. Low intensity movement. Walking, easy cycling. A relaxed jog where you could still hold a conversation without gasping for air. Nothing hurts and nothing feels heroic, and it creates no dramatic spike at all. It is a hum, not an alarm. What it creates instead is a persistent, low-grade metabolic demand running quietly in the background for hours at a time. When researchers follow untrained people through long blocks of moderate endurance work, something genuinely surprising shows up in the results. Performance improves meaningfully. But the sheer amount of mitochondrial material packed into the muscle sometimes barely changes at all. So, what improved? Function. Enzyme activity climbed. Oxidative stress per unit of work dropped. Efficiency went up across the board. The mitochondria did not multiply and did not get bigger. They simply got much better at the job they already had. It is the difference between hiring more staff and training the staff you have. Same headcount, completely different output. Here is the translation that matters most. Easy movement teaches your mitochondria how to operate calmly under load. That matters more than people realize, because metabolic health is not about peak output. Nobody's life is decided by their maximum. It is decided by how stable you feel at rest, how you handle a meal, how quickly you settle after stress, whether your energy is a flat line or a roller coaster, whether you sleep deeply or lie there wired at midnight. Easy movement builds that. It is not exciting, it makes no good story, and it is the most underrated input available. Now I want to go deeper into the difference between how many mitochondria you have and how well they cooperate. On quantity, intervals are impressive. They reliably raise the classic mitochondrial enzyme markers, often matching or beating far longer endurance sessions. But there is a second body of research looking at mitochondrial dynamics, and this is where it becomes genuinely beautiful. Mitochondria are not static beings floating in your cells. They are a constantly reshaping network, fusing together and splitting apart continuously. Splitting, called fission, is quality control. It isolates a damaged section so it can be tagged and recycled. It is triage. Fusion, merging, is cooperation. And here is the remarkable part. When mitochondria fuse, they physically share their resources with each other. A struggling mitochondrion missing something critical can fuse with a healthy one and borrow exactly what it needs to repair itself. It is a mutual aid network operating inside your cells right now, while you sit there listening to this. The truest comparison I know is a good marriage. Some days I am depleted and my wife is running strong. I pull from that and it carries me. Other days it reverses completely and she pulls from me instead. Neither of us runs at 100% daily. Nobody does. But the connection means neither of us has to. Now here is how the two training styles map onto that, and this comparison is the spine of everything today. High intensity adds horsepower. Low intensity upgrades the wiring, the cooling system, and the brakes. Both matter in that order. You can bolt a bigger engine into anything. It is thrilling for a week, but if the cooling cannot dump heat, something breaks. You do not have a faster car. You have a more dangerous one. You have got the go without the woe. This explains why intervals feel amazing at first. Real power, better numbers, genuine progress, and a lot of new confidence. Then around week 5 or 6 it curdles. Sleep goes shallow. Motivation flattens. Resting heart rate creeps steadily upward. The same session that felt brilliant now flattens you. Nothing broke. The chassis just could not hold the horsepower you added. Now let us talk about what you came here for. Your mitochondria's actual ability to break fat down for fuel. This is where my expectations got mugged by the data, and I have to be honest about being wrong. I would have said easy training wins easily. It burns a higher percentage of fat, so surely it trains fat burning better. But the research comparing intervals against steady moderate training in overweight and obese adults says something quite different. Both approaches significantly improve maximum fat oxidation, And head to head, there is often no meaningful difference in the size of effect. Which sounds like a contradiction. I just spent minutes explaining these are completely different signals. So how does that happen? Because they arrive at the same place by different roads. And once you see both roads, it stops being confusing. Easy movement improves fat burning through use. You repeatedly run the pathway, the enzymes upregulate, the transporters increase. It is practice. Intervals improve fat burning through capacity. They expand the whole respiratory infrastructure, giving your cells more tools and more raw processing power. One rehearses the skill, the other enlarges the workshop where that skill happens. Same destination, completely different route there. This is exactly why getting religious about one method is a mistake. Both camps describe one road and call it the map. Fat loss does not come from a workout or even a type of workout. It comes from the environment your metabolism lives in. 24 hours a day, every day. Training shapes that environment. Training is never the thing itself. Let me bring in aerobic capacity because it slots in perfectly and explains why so many people feel permanently tired. Both intervals and steady endurance improve aerobic capacity. Intervals hold a slight edge, especially in people who are less trained. One honest caveat: walking alone will not build that ceiling unless you push. Add hills, add load, add pace. Comfortable stays comfortable. Intervals repeatedly force the heart toward maximum output so it moves more blood per beat. That is a pump adaptation. Steady work improves extraction instead. Capillaries increase, muscle gets better at pulling oxygen from arriving blood, oxidative enzymes climb steadily. So the pattern holds again. Intervals raise your ceiling. Easy movement raises your floor. Neither one replaces the other. And here is the observation that reorganized how I coach people. Most exhausted people are not limited by their ceiling. They are limited by their floor. Their resting state sits too close to their stressed state, so nothing ever feels easy. They cannot recover while still moving. In the gym, that means no recovery between intervals. In life, one bad morning costs the afternoon. Raising your floor makes life feel easier. Raising your ceiling makes hard things possible. If you are tired, the floor comes first. Now let us tie the knot, because insulin sensitivity is the central pillar, and it is where the fastest changes happen. Studies comparing intervals against moderate training and significant insulin resistance have produced results genuinely worth knowing about in detail. Lower fasting glucose. Improved long-term blood sugar markers. Roughly doubled expression of the transporter that pulls glucose into the cell. So yes, for insulin resistance specifically, hard intervals are a powerful tool. But there is a nuance almost nobody mentions. In several of these protocols, the glucose improvements happened largely independently of any real mitochondrial change. Sit with that for a second. Your blood sugar handling can improve dramatically and fast before your mitochondria have meaningfully upgraded at all. Here is the honest timeline, because the accurate version is far more impressive than the exaggerated one anyway. Within hours of one hard session, your muscles pull in glucose through a pathway that does not even require insulin. That improved sensitivity measurably lasts roughly a day or two afterwards. One session. Real change. That is physiology, not marketing. Within days to about 2 weeks, enzyme adaptations appear, and afternoon energy crashes often start fading noticeably. Within weeks to months, structural changes accumulate. Network quality, capillary density, and measurable reductions in visceral fat around your organs. Visceral fat is the inflammatory stuff wrapped around your organs, and it responds to exercise far faster than surface fat does. Intervals get you there in dramatically less time, which is the entire reason short protocols are worth caring about. But here is the sting. Insulin sensitivity built on top of unimproved mitochondria is fragile, and it does not hold. This explains what enormous numbers of people experience but cannot articulate. Their labs improve, and they still feel completely awful. Energy is unstable, stress tolerance is gone, recovery drags on, sleep is poor, and they assume they are doing something wrong. They are not. They widened the delivery pipe into a factory that is still understaffed. Glucose arrives. Nobody processes it. That is not a failure of training. It is a failure of sequencing. And sequencing is fixable within a week. A quick word on sleep, because this is where the whole system either compounds or quietly collapses on you. Every adaptation described here gets executed during sleep, not during training. Training writes the request. Sleep is what actually fulfills it. Repair, protein synthesis, clearing byproducts, resetting your stress axis. That is overnight work, and it cannot be rushed or skipped. Hard training late in the day raises core temperature and drive at exactly the moment both need to fall. That degrades sleep, which impairs the next day's glucose handling and blunts recovery, so the next signal cannot execute properly. No execution means no adaptation. No adaptation means frustration. And frustration makes people train harder, which tightens the loop further. Let me recap in one breath, then build the structure you can actually start using tomorrow morning. Hard training creates a fast, powerful stress signal. It raises the ceiling, expands capacity, and sensitizes you to insulin quickly. Easy movement creates a slow, calm adaptation. It raises the floor, improves efficiency, and builds the recovery that lets signals execute. They are not competitors. They are complements. But they only work in the right order, and that order surprises people. First, easy movement is the foundation, not the filler. It is not what you do when too tired for real training. It is the real training. It improves efficiency, drives fat burning, builds calm, and stabilizes your energy and your sleep. Frequency beats duration. Do it most days, calmly. 10 minutes after a meal is not a consolation prize at all. It is one of the highest return things available for blood sugar control, and it costs you almost nothing. Second, layer intervals on top. Do not build the house on them. 1 to 3 sessions a week is genuinely enough. That is the whole prescription, unless you are a competing athlete, and if you were, you would already have a coach. 3 excellent sessions with real recovery will beat 6 mediocre ones with none, not slightly, completely and repeatedly over months. Third, timing is a free upgrade. Do the hard work earlier in the day whenever your schedule allows it. That aligns the stress with your natural rhythm instead of manufacturing a second stress peak late at night. Save easy movement for later. An evening walk is one of the most effective nervous system downshifters available anywhere. You are not really training muscles here. You are training hormones and signals. Muscles are just where the message gets delivered. Fourth, learn to read your feedback. Watch sleep quality, lingering soreness, resting heart rate, and flat motivation very carefully. Watch especially for dreading a session you used to enjoy. That one is the loudest signal your body has. Here is the reframe to keep permanently. Those are not failures. Those are feedback. Your body just sent you a status report. The right response is pulling back intensity and protecting consistency, because consistency beats intensity over any time frame that matters. And here is the thesis of this entire thing, said slowly. Your mitochondria adapt to what feels safe enough to repeat. Again, safe enough to repeat. Not hardest, not most impressive, simply safe enough that your body expects it to happen again. If a stimulus registers as genuinely threatening, the rational response is protection, not expansion. You cannot bully adaptation out of survival mode. You can only invite it out of a system that feels secure. That single idea has fixed more people than any program. When the balance is right, three things arrive together. Fat loss accelerates, including the visceral fat that actually matters most. Energy stabilizes, meaning fewer crashes and far less dependence on stimulants just to function normally through your afternoon. And training stops feeling like punishment, which decides whether you are still doing any of this in 5 years' time. Now the specifics I promised, starting with that 11-minute session, built for someone wanting maximum return per minute. 4 rounds. 2 minutes hard, 1 minute easy between them. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 11 minutes of work. Hard means an effort you could hold for 2 minutes but would struggle to stretch to 3. Conversation is impossible. Breathing is heavy and controlled. You are not sprinting, because sprinting for 2 straight minutes is not actually a thing. Warm up 5 easy minutes before and cool down 5 after. Those are packaging, not stimulus, so I am not counting them. Use a bike, rower, incline treadmill, or a hill. Pick whatever pushes your heart without punishing your joints. If you carry significant extra weight, the bike is almost always right. High heart rate, no pounding through your knees. Once that feels comfortable for a few weeks, move to the classic 4x4, which is the gold standard. 4 minutes hard, 3 minutes easy, 4 rounds. It is brutal and still under half an hour, including all recovery. But it assumes you already have a base. Attempting it while deconditioned is how people decide intervals are not for them. Here is a framing worth adopting permanently. Treat interval training exactly the way you already treat resistance training. Nobody does a heavy set of squats, then repeats it 30 seconds later. You rest until quality output returns. Intervals work identically. The goal is not accumulating fatigue. The goal is accumulating high-quality hard work, and fatigue prevents that. So if you are starting from a difficult place, do 30 seconds hard, then recover as long as you genuinely need. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it takes until you can truly push again. Then repeat 4 to 6 times. You are raising the ceiling. But push a ceiling too fast and it does not rise. It caves in on you. My favorite variation is a descending ladder because it hits several systems without the grind of identical repeated intervals. Push hard 3 minutes, recover fully, then 2 minutes, then 1 minute, then 30 seconds, then 20 seconds. Then you are done. Because each effort shortens, you push each one harder. Because recovery is unrestricted, quality stays high the whole way through. That is a lot of stress with very little threat, which is exactly the recipe everything today points toward. Now, the nutritional pieces, and the third one is the mistake I have been building toward since the very beginning. First, a small amount of carbohydrate after hard intervals. I generally run lower carb, and I will happily defend that. But after genuinely hard intervals, a little honey or maple syrup, 15 or 20 grams, will not derail your fat loss. What it does is turn down the stress dial and start recovery. This is not a fueling argument at all. Your muscles are not desperate for glycogen after 11 minutes. This is purely a signaling argument, and signals are the whole game. That small dose tells your nervous system the emergency is over. You are safe. Stand down. Begin repairing what just happened. It took me a long time to swallow that. It went against my instincts and honestly against my identity. But the goal was never avoiding carbohydrate for its own sake. The goal was capturing the adaptation I just paid for. Second, be intelligent about fasting and intervals. Training fasted is fine, and there are real benefits to doing it sometimes. What I would avoid is hard intervals on a day you keep fasting for many hours afterwards with no recovery signal. That stacks two significant stressors together. You send a build command and then immediately remove the ability to build anything. Conversely, if you always train fasted, deliberately train sometimes with food on board. This particular nuance gets missed constantly. Training only in one fuel state makes you excellent at that state and mediocre at the other. Flexibility requires practicing both. Third, here's the mistake. For years, I did something that felt maximally healthy and was quietly working against me. I would finish a hard session and immediately load up on high-dose antioxidants, believing I was supporting my recovery. Except, go back to what we covered earlier. One of the three signals telling your cells to adapt is oxidative stress. Those reactive oxygen species are not damage you need to neutralize. In that specific window, they are the message itself. Flood the system with high-dose antioxidants immediately afterwards, and you can blunt that message. Research shows exactly this happening. High-dose vitamin C and E around training has shown attenuated adaptation, including blunted insulin sensitivity improvements in some studies. There is a second layer that is even more interesting. Part of what you train is your own internal antioxidant system. Your own glutathione and related defenses upregulate in response to oxidative challenge. That is a genuinely trainable capacity you own. Supply antioxidants externally, and the challenge never fully registers. Your internal system has no reason to strengthen. You outsourced it. So wait roughly 2 hours before high-dose antioxidant supplements after hard training. Simple change, completely free, meaningful difference. One honest clarification, because I would rather be accurate than dramatic. The strong evidence concerns high-dose isolated supplements, not food. A handful of blueberries will not erase your workout. If the choice is eating well or badly, always eat well. But if you take concentrated antioxidant supplements, move them out of that window. That is free adaptation currently being left behind. The order I use is simple. Small, fast carbohydrate straight after, then a 2-hour gap, then the nutrient-dense food. Signal safety first. Let the adaptation register properly. Then feed it well. That is the entire nutritional strategy in 3 steps. Let me leave you with the shape of the whole thing, because I want this to stick long afterwards. You have 2 tools. One raises your ceiling. One raises your floor. One shouts loudly. One hums quietly in the background. One adds horsepower. One upgrades the cooling system. Neither works alone, and nearly everyone ignores one of them entirely. The hard work is the smaller half. 1 to 3 sessions. 11 minutes at a time is genuinely enough to start. The easy work is the larger half, and it is the half nobody ever posts about. Walk daily, especially after meals. Around all of it, protect the conditions that let your body execute the command you sent. Sleep, recovery, a settled nervous system. Because this comes back to one sentence, and it is the one I want you carrying with you from here. Your mitochondria adapt to what feels safe enough to repeat. Not hardest, not most painful, not whatever earns the most respect, simply what is repeatable. Build a stimulus your body trusts, deliver it consistently, and give it the conditions to respond. And the changes you have been chasing with brute force for years will quietly start arriving on their own.